The barn had been standing for more than 70 years, its weather-beaten boards bleached to a pale silver by countless seasons of sun and rain. From a distance, it looked sturdy enough, but anyone who stepped inside could feel the age in its bones, the warped planks that creaked underfoot, the rafters that sagged ever so slightly, the faint smell of dust, dry hay, and old timber that never fully left the air. High above the floor, where a wooden support beam had cracked decades earlier during a storm, a gap in the structure opened into a small, shadowed alcove. This was where a barn owl, known by the farm's owner as Ashwing, spent her nights. She had lived there long before the farmer ever noticed her, slipping silently in and out with the dusk, her pale feathers blending into the moonlight, her plumage, soft and gray, like the ashes of a long-burned fire, made her nearly invisible when she perched motionless on the broken beam. From this vantage point, she observed everything. Ashwing knew the rhythm of the farm. When the cows were brought in, when the barn cats returned from their hunting, when the farmer climbed the ladder to stack hay or repair a loose board. She heard the rustle of mice in the straw, the distant yipping of coyotes along the fence line, and the shifting of wind through the broken shingles. Nothing surprised her, until one evening late in the autumn, when the sun had nearly finished sinking behind the ridge of pines, and the sky glowed with a final wash of red. That evening, long after visitors usually stopped coming, she heard a foreign sound, the crunch of tires on gravel, slow and deliberate. Ashwing tilted her heart-shaped face, listening. The vehicle that pulled into the yard was a battered pickup truck she didn't recognize. Its headlights swept briefly across the barn's walls before snapping off. Two men stepped out. They were not from the area. She sensed that immediately. Their movements were tense and hurried, their boots too new, their eyes darting around the property as if searching for witnesses. They approached the back of the barn, speaking in low voices. Ashwin could not understand their words, but she understood tone, posture, breath. These men carried the nervous energy of predators, but not of the natural kind she knew. No hunger, no territorial instinct, only something sharp and uneasy. Inside the barn, a faint rustle came from below her perch. A young field mouse, thin from the cooling weather and desperate for any remaining grain, poked his nose from behind a bale of hay. His name was Pip, though Ashwing did not care to know the names of prey. To her, he was simply another small heartbeat in the vast tapestry of the night. Yet Pip, too, was watching. His whiskers trembled as he followed the stranger's movements with wide black eyes. He sensed danger the way only a creature at the bottom of the food chain could, instantly, instinctively, without reason or language. When the men slipped into the barn, their boots thudded softly across the wooden floor. One carried a bundle wrapped tightly in brown cloth. The other kept glancing toward the road as if expecting someone to appear. They crouched behind old crates near the wall and spoke again, hurried and hushed. The taller man's voice had an edge to it, and the shorter kept repeating something that made his companion curse under his breath. Ashwing shifted her talons on the beam, feathers ruffling once. She did not like the way the barn felt tonight. It was as if the darkness itself had tightened, every sound sharpened. From her perch, she watched as the men placed the bundle onto the ground, tied with rope and smelling faintly of metal and oil. Pip creeped forward for a better look, before his survival instincts snapped him back into the shadows. Ashwing's dark eyes never left the men as they finished their task and slipped back outside, closing the barn doors behind them. The truck engine growled, tires spun over gravel, and the sound faded into the distance. The barn fell silent again, but not peacefully. Something unnatural had been left behind. Ashwing remained on her broken beam for a long time, listening to the world outside. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. Somewhere in the field, a rabbit thumped a warning through the ground. Pip stayed hidden, breathing fast. Ashwing should have descended then, should have swept silently across the barn to seize the trembling mouse beneath the hay. But she didn't. For the first time in many seasons, she did not feel like hunting. Her instincts, older than the barn itself, were whispering caution. Something had changed tonight. Something had entered her territory that did not belong. She lifted her head, scanning the yard through the crack in the wall, and for the first time in her life on the Harrison farm, The owl on the broken beam felt that the night, her trusted ally, offered no secrets at all, only warnings. Pip had lived every day of his short life on the edge of fear, because for a creature as small as he was, the world had never offered safety, only temporary hiding places. His mother had taught him early that every rustle in the grass could be a fox, every shifting shadow might conceal an owl, and every moment of silence meant danger was drawing near. Pip survived by being small, by being quick, and mostly by being unnoticed. The barn, with its broken boards and scattered hay, had seemed like a good place for winter preparation. The air inside was warmer than the fields outside, and stray kernels of feed still clung to the floor from the cattle's last visit. But tonight, safety felt like a memory. His heart still raced from the moment the stranger stepped inside and left something behind, something wrapped, something wrong. After the truck disappeared into the darkness, the quiet that followed was not the gentle, familiar quiet of farm nights. It was tight, trembling, and tense, like the air just before lightning strikes. Pip peeked out from the crack in the hay bale. The bundle lay only a few mouse lengths away, wrapped in brown cloth and tied tightly with rope. The scent drifting from it made his whiskers twitch and recoil. It wasn't food, it wasn't animal, it wasn't anything from the world he understood. It smelled of oil, cold metal, and something sharp he could not name. Instinct urged him to flee, but hunger kept him near. He had spent the entire day dodging crows and farm cats, and his small stomach burned with emptiness. Cautiously, he crept forward, sniffing the air in tiny pulses. Mice judged danger through scent more than sight, and this scent, whatever it was, radiated danger like heat from a fire. He backed away quickly, slipping into the thin shadows behind a loose board. Above him, Ashwing shifted her position on the broken beam. The faint scrape of her talons against the wood made Pip freeze once more. Yet the owl did not descend. She merely watched, feathers sleeked tight, body perfectly still except for the gentle rise and fall of her breath. Pip had seen many owls in his short life, too many, but none like her. She was larger, quieter, more focused. A hunter who needed no noise, no threat. She simply existed, and that alone was enough to terrify him. But tonight there was something different in her posture. She was alert, but not toward him. Her gaze was fixed on the barn door as if expecting the men to return. The strange, shared dread between prey and predator made Pip's fur prickle. Animals understood danger long before humans did, and though Pip was small, he could feel the barn itself reacting. The wooden walls creaked in the cold, but it sounded like a warning. The beams groaned, though there was no wind. Even the hay seemed to shift, unsettled. A sudden gust outside rattled the door hinges, and Pip darted further into his hiding place. He waited, trembling, until the sounds settled again. He wanted to run back into the fields, to burrow under roots or disappear beneath old fallen logs, where owls couldn't see him so easily. But hunger anchored him near the barn, and the memory of safer nights made him hesitate to abandon it. Eventually, unable to stand the pain in his stomach any longer, he ventured out again. Careful paw after careful paw, he scurried towards a crack in the floorboards, where a few grains had fallen earlier. As he nibbled, his ears twitched constantly, turning toward every faint sound, the distant cries of coyotes pacing the tree line, the restless shifting of cattle in their paddocks, the sighing moan of wind through the old barn roof. Above him, Ashwing remained rigid but unthreatening, for now. Pip didn't know why she didn't hunt him, only that she didn't. Her attention was fixed elsewhere, and that frightened him more than if she had swooped down upon him. If something could distract a creature like her, then it must be powerful indeed. So he ate fast, gulping each grain as if it might be his last, because for a mouse, it very well could be. When he finally allowed himself to breathe, he cast another nervous glance toward the bundle. It lay motionless, but its presence felt heavy, like a stone pressing on the barn's heartbeat. Pip didn't understand human objects, but he understood the feeling of something that did not belong. And whatever those men had left behind, it was wrong in a way no animal needed words to describe. For a moment he imagined telling the other mice, warning them to stay away from the barn until the strange smell was gone. But even as he thought it, he knew no one would listen. In the world of mice, hunger always spoke louder than caution. Pip retreated again to his hiding place, curling his tiny body into a trembling ball. Above him, Ashwing blinked once, slow and solemn, as though she too sensed that the barn was no longer just an old building on a quiet farm. Something had shifted tonight, something unseen but undeniable. Pip closed his eyes tightly, wishing for morning, wishing for safety, but knowing that the night had only just begun, and whatever danger the strangers had brought into the barn, he, Ashwing, and every other creature who lived here would be forced to face it before dawn. Jack had been part of the Harrison farm for nearly 10 years, long enough to know every inch of land the way other dogs knew the rhythms of their own heartbeat. He was a border collie, sharp-eyed, intelligent, and restless, even in old age. And though the stiffness in his knees had begun to betray him on cold mornings, he still moved with a quiet authority that came from a lifetime of work. He understood the farm better than any human ever could. He knew which gates groaned when opened, which fence posts leaned too far forward, which cows tended to wander, and which corners the foxes favored when sneaking toward the henhouse. But on this night, nothing felt quite right. The moment the stranger's truck rumbled down the gravel road, Jack had lifted his head from his resting spot beside the farmhouse porch. He sniffed the air, tail lowering, ears swiveling in alert, precise angles. New scents, sweat, tension, gasoline, leather, drifted toward him. Scents that did not belong to the farmers, neighbors, or feed delivery trucks he recognized. His instincts stirred uneasily. He waited, watching the headlights fade behind the barn, listening to unfamiliar footsteps crunch on dry leaves. When the truck finally left, Jack circled the yard with deliberate steps, nose pressed close to the ground. His world was shaped by scent, and tonight the scents were troubling. He followed the trail into the barn, pushing open the door with his muzzle. Inside, Ashwing perched silently on her broken beam, eyes reflecting faint moonlight. To Jack, the owl smelled of wind and dust and wildness, normal things. But something else in the barn did not smell normal at all. Jack crept closer, guided by the sharp tang of oil and metal. That was when he found the bundle. He sniffed it once, then recoiled slightly. Gun oil. He recognized it. Mr. Harrison had fired his old hunting rifle only a few times in Jack's life, mostly to scare off coyotes during harsh winters. The scent that clung to the cloth-wrapped object was similar, but stronger, darker, as if the metal beneath the cloth held a past Jack didn't understand, but instinctively mistrusted. Jack pawed nervously at the ground, letting out a soft whine. Ashwing shifted above him, but did not fly down. She simply watched him with that unblinking patience, unique to owls. From somewhere unseen, Jack heard the rapid heartbeat of a small creature, a mouse, hiding. Jack ignored it. Prey and predator meant nothing tonight. Danger was bigger than hunger. The dog backed away, turning toward the yawning opening of the barn and trotting across the yard toward the farmhouse. He needed to alert Mr. Harrison. Jack barked once, sharp and urgent. When no answer came, he barked again. Inside, the old farmer slept heavily, worn out from baling hay earlier in the day. His hearing, softened by age, did not catch the alarm in Jack's call. The wind rose, rattling the windows, and the sound of the dog's bark disappeared into the night. Jack ran to the back door and scraped his paw against it. Nothing. He circled the yard once more, head low, ears straining for any hint that the men might return. The barn behind him creaked uneasily. Ashwing was still watching the fields, head turning slowly toward every rustle. Animals felt what humans often missed: the shift in the world, right before something went wrong. The cattle in the far pasture moved restlessly, stamping hooves in the dirt. A distant owl called from the tree line, a sharp warning note. The night felt stretched, tense. Jack went back to sit facing the road, body planted firmly, guard raised. He would stay awake. He would listen. Somewhere inside the barn, Pip trembled in his hiding place, and Ashwing clung to her perch, feathers smoothed tight against her body. In their own ways, each understood the truth. Danger had settled on the farm like a shadow, and until humans understood it too, the animals would have to bear the weight of the night alone. Hours crawled by. The darkness deepened. Jack did not sleep. He kept watch because no one else could. And though he did not yet know what the strangers had left behind, he knew one thing clearly. Whatever had entered their quiet world was wrong. And until dawn arrived, every living creature on the Harrison farm was standing on the thin edge of something far larger than they could comprehend. Night settled slowly over the Harrison farm, but it did not bring the calm that usually followed sundown. Instead, the darkness felt heavy, almost watchful, as though the sky itself were waiting for something to happen. A faint chill seeped across the fields, stirring the dry grass and carrying scents of damp earth and distant rain. In the barn, Ashwing remained perfectly still on her broken beam, her feathers pressed close to her body, her eyes glowing faintly as they tracked every movement in the yard through the cracks in the wooden wall. Below her, Jack lay near the barn entrance, with his chin resting between his paws, but he did not sleep. His ears twitched at every distant noise, cattle shifting in their pens, a gate clattering somewhere far off, the restless scamper of small creatures under the barn floorboards. He could not settle. Something in the air told him danger had not passed, merely because the strangers had driven away. Pip, curled tightly beneath a loose plank, felt the same. His tiny heartbeat thudded fast and nervous, every instinct screaming to remain hidden. Outside, the night carried rumors. A rabbit thumped a warning into the ground before vanishing under a bush. Coyotes paced the tree line but did not cross into the pasture, their yips sharp and anxious. Even the wind seemed to rush by with a purpose, pulling at the barn walls as though urging everything inside to stay alert. Hours slipped by, each one slower than the last. Ashwing watched the road, sensing movement long before any human would. Jack lifted his head more than once, only to settle again into tense stillness. Pip dared not move at all. The bundle wrapped in brown cloth lay exactly where the men had left it, motionless. But its presence still seemed to hum with threat. Pip didn't understand what humans hid inside such things, but he knew the scent of fear when he felt it. The barn animals were not alone in their uneasiness. Even the horses in the nearby stalls tossed their heads and stamped their hooves, disturbed by something that was not yet visible but felt in the ground itself. It was nearly midnight when the first set of new headlights appeared at the end of the gravel road. A faint glow rose between the trees, steady and pale, unlike the harsh yellow from the stranger's battered truck earlier. Jack stood immediately, tail rigid, muscles taut. Ashwing leaned forward on her perch, wings slightly lifted in instinctive readiness. Pip sank deeper into his hiding place, pressing himself so flat that his tiny body trembled with the effort. The vehicle rolled closer, crunching the gravel softly under its tires. Then it stopped, a quiet, controlled stop, not hurried or panicked. A door opened, then closed. Jack sniffed the air and relaxed just enough to breathe. This scent he knew. The owl, too, eased her feathers slightly. The headlights shut off, and moments later, the barn door creaked open. Sheriff Marina Collins stepped inside, her flashlight sweeping across the ground until it met Jack's waiting eyes. "There you are," she murmured, frowning at the dog's tense posture. "What's got you riled up tonight?" Jack pushed against her leg, whining in a low, urgent tone that was not typical of him. Collins knelt and ran a hand over his back, but even as she tried to calm him, her instinct, honed from years in law enforcement, told her he wasn't nervous without reason. She scanned the barn slowly, her light falling upon the bundle near the crates. At first she exhaled softly as if relieved to find something that explained Jack's agitation. But when she stepped closer and saw the shape, the rope, and the shadows beneath the cloth, her expression hardened. She put on a glove, crouched, and carefully loosened the rope. Underneath she saw cold metal, the kind she recognized instantly. A modified rifle. Illegal. Dangerous. Recently used. Her breath caught, and for a second she simply stared at it, her mind clicking rapidly through possibilities. Who left it? Why hide it here? Did they plan to return? Evidence of a crime in her quiet county was rare. Evidence left so carelessly was almost unheard of. She reached to unclip her radio when another sound stopped her. An engine. Far away at first, but growing louder, approaching the farm with growing speed. Jack tensed again, a growl rumbling through his chest. Ashwing froze, talons gripping the beam. Pip didn't need to look. He felt the vibrations through the wood. Sheriff Collins turned off her flashlight instantly, plunging the barn into complete darkness. The only light came from Ashwing's faintly glinting eyes high above. The approaching engine sputtered slightly, the same uneven rhythm she had noticed earlier that evening while driving her patrol. The same truck, the same men. "Stay quiet," she whispered to Jack, though the dog hardly needed telling. The barn door remained open only a sliver as the battered truck stopped outside, its headlights sweeping across the yard before shutting off. Voices drifted in, impatient, hurried, irritated. Collins pressed herself behind a stack of crates, one hand on her holstered weapon, the other gripping her radio without turning it on. The barn grew impossibly silent. Ashwing's heart thumped once, slow and deep. Pip didn't dare breathe. Jack's growl died into a tense stillness. Boots approached. The barn door creaked. And the night, thick with fear and anticipation, held its breath as the strangers stepped inside once more, unaware that this time the darkness was not waiting for them. It was watching.